The day started with water carried from a pot on the stove. For nearly half of all American homes in 1940, 45%, according to government figures, a complete plumbing system did not exist. No hot water, no flush toilet, no tub or shower. In rural areas, the number was considerably higher. The Saturday morning bath was a scheduled event. You heated the water, carried it to the tub, waited your turn, and when you were finished, you put on your good clothes and went to town. Blue laws, Sunday closing statutes that most states had carried on their books since the colonial period, made Sunday commerce illegal across most of the country. No movies, no hardware store, no variety store, no drugstore lunch counter. That left Saturday as the single day when the commercial and social life of a small town could happen in full. The weekly errand circuit and the weekly social calendar were the same thing, because the physical layout of the town made them inseparable. The barbershop was not an appointment. You walked in, took a seat along the wall, and waited. The wait was functional in more than one sense. Farmers sat next to shopkeepers. Men who had no other occasion to be in the same room together ended up there for 20 minutes once a week, and the conversation covered whatever the week had produced. Land sales, drought, which family's son had enlisted. The barber carried most of this information himself. He had been accumulating it, chair by chair, for years. The haircut was close to compulsory in the 1940s and 50s. The crew cut, the flat top, the Princeton were not merely stylistic choices, they were social presentation. Boys came in with their fathers. Old men came alone. When the Beatles appeared on American television in February of 1964, the direction of men's hair began to shift in a way that did not reverse. Unisex salons offered cuts that the traditional barbershop was not equipped to provide, and in the years that followed, many neighborhood shops closed permanently. The physical act of cutting hair could be moved elsewhere. The waiting room and what happened in it could not. In black communities, the barbershop had operated under different conditions and served a wider range of functions. Jim Crow laws had restricted black Americans from most public gathering spaces, and the black-owned barbershop had filled that gap alongside the church. Voter registration was organized in barbershops. The arguments of the civil rights movement were sharpened in them. That institution maintained its function through the civil rights era and beyond. Its customers never lost the need for what it provided. F.W. Woolworth opened his first 5 and 10-cent store in Utica, New York in 1879. By the early 1960s, there were 2,850 Woolworths locations in the United States. The lunch counter ran along one wall of most of them. Chrome and formica, spinning stools, a soda fountain, and a menu calibrated for working people. In 1964, a trade survey found that Woolworths was operating 1,950 lunch counter locations against McDonald's 611. A banana split cost 39 cents in the 1950s. The soda fountain's origins are worth understanding clearly because the familiar version omits the mechanism. The surge in fountain culture began in the early 1920s, not from any particular appetite for carbonated drinks, but because Prohibition had closed the bars. When alcohol was made illegal, Americans lost one of their primary public social spaces. The soda fountain counter absorbed the displaced function. The crowds it began drawing had been going somewhere else the week before. On February 1st, 1960, 4 students from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College, Ezell Blair Jr., Franklin McCain, David Richmond, and Joseph McNeil, walked into the Woolworths in downtown Greensboro, North Carolina, made small purchases, kept their receipts, and sat down at the lunch counter. The counter served white customers only. When the staff refused to serve them, they remained in their seats. By February 4th, more than 300 students had joined the protest. Within 2 weeks, similar demonstrations were occurring in 55 cities across 13 states. After nearly $200,000 in lost business, approximately $2.2 million in current value, store manager Clarence Harris asked 4 black Woolworths employees to sit down at the counter on July 25, 1960. Geneva Tisdale, Susie Morrison, Annetha Jones, and Charles Bess became the first black customers served there. Geneva Tisdale was still working at that Woolworths when it closed in 1993, 33 years later. The soda fountain counter that American memory associates with community and warmth was, across the South and in parts of the North, a site of enforced racial exclusion, and the same object that appears in nostalgic imagery was the site of one of the most consequential protests of the civil rights movement. Both facts belong to the same history. The last Woolworth stores closed in 1997 and 1998. The role of the small-town pharmacist was broader than the title suggests. Truman Lastinger, a pharmacist who began practicing in the early 1950s, wrote in Drug Topics magazine, "It was a pleasure to practice pharmacy in the early 1950s. The pharmacist was a respected member of the community. Most rural customers did not have enough money to go to the doctor, even though an office visit was often $3 or $4 or less. So druggists saw and treated cuts, bruises, bee stings, goiters, hernias, sore throats, colds, and influenza." Until the 1951 Durham-Humphrey Amendment, pharmacists were legally authorized to prescribe and dispense most medications without a physician's order. Between 1980 and 2000, more than 17,000 independent pharmacies closed as chain operations expanded nationwide. The Saturday Children's Matinee ran for 2 to 3 hours and included cartoons, a newsreel, a serial episode that ended on a cliffhanger, and a feature. The ticket was 12 cents, or 25 or 35 for a Disney picture. One account from the early 1950s records the arithmetic with the precision of someone who had worked it out many times. The magic number for me was 26 cents. 12 cents for the ticket, 10 cents for the popcorn, and 4 cents for the candy if I bought it at the drugstore, not at the movie. To raise the 26 cents, the writer and his cousin collected empty ale bottles from the railroad yard at the edge of town. A returned bottle paid a nickel. The single-screen theater was often the most architecturally elaborate building on Main Street. In towns without air conditioning in most homes, the theater offered something available almost nowhere else. That practical advantage eroded through the 1960s as residential air conditioning became standard. Television had entered 90% of American homes by 1960. By the mid-60s, small-town theaters could no longer secure first-run pictures on competitive terms. The VCR arrived in 1977. The multiplex, attached to the regional shopping mall, offered 8 or 12 simultaneous choices. The old theaters closed one at a time, without announcement. What is harder to account for than any individual business is the loss of the conditions that made incidental community life possible. The barbershop waiting room, the stools at the lunch counter, the bench outside the hardware store, these were not destinations. Nobody drove to town specifically to sit on a bench. The bench existed because the town's layout required people to move through the same spaces, and the pace of the Saturday circuit required waiting, and waiting generated conversation that no organized event would have produced. Two structural conditions sustained this, and both dissolved within roughly the same period. The Blue Laws concentrated commercial activity into a single day. As states repealed or stopped enforcing those laws from the late 1950s through the 1970s, commerce dispersed across 7 days, and the concentrated social character of Saturday went with it. The second condition was the physical location of commerce. In 1956, the architect Victor Gruen opened the Southdale Center in Edina, Minnesota, the first enclosed, climate-controlled shopping mall in the United States. Robert Gibbs, an urban planning expert who studied the transition, estimated that American main streets had held approximately 80% of retail market share at their peak. After the mall era established itself, that figure fell to roughly 5%. Gruen, in a 1978 interview, said he no longer wished to be identified as the father of the American mall. He called the developments that had followed his model bastard developments and said they had destroyed the cities he had intended to improve. What was lost was not primarily commercial. The Saturday circuit had functioned as the week's only reliable occasion when people who had no organized reason to interact ended up in the same space at the same time. A farmer, a retired school teacher, a hardware clerk, and a child running an errand were brought together not by any program, but by the structure of the town and the compression of the week. That structure, once disassembled, was not reassembled in the spaces that replaced it. A handful of the original institutions survived. Zaharako's Ice Cream Parlor in Columbus, Indiana, has been operating since 1900. Berdine's Five and Dime in Harrisville, West Virginia, has been open since 1908. Sign's Five and Dime in Quakertown, Pennsylvania, opened in 1912 and is currently run by the fifth generation of the founding family. The soda fountain still serves breakfast and lunch 6 days a week. The last Saturday that felt like the last Saturday was probably sometime in the early 1960s, depending on the town. The hardware store was open. The barber was in his chair. Nothing had been closed or announced. People left in the afternoon and said they would be back the following week. For many of them, the town they returned to was already moving in a direction nobody had named yet, towards somewhere they would not recognize until they were already there.